All right, it is the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. It's Thursday, June 24th, and it is 6:03 p.m. Hi, everybody. All right, so I sent you the April and May meeting minutes. Does anyone have any changes, comments, edits, feelings? Okay.
I will make a motion to accept the minutes from April and May. Actually, we should probably do them separately to be accurate, right?
Doesn't matter.
Anyway, okay, so I will make a motion to accept the minutes from the April and May meetings.
I second it.
Cool.
All right. So we can, is there any discussion? I'm very bad at Robert's rules. Okay. So we could do a vote. So all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from April and May. I'm Jana. Aye.
Aye.
Jackie, aye.
All right. Great. Thank you. We'll send those to Barbara. All right. Also on the agenda before Councillor Peak arrives was just recap of the City Council and CPA meetings. I forgot to go to one of them, but I think, Brad, you were at both and Jackie was at one, right?
I think, were we at both?
I couldn't go to the other one because I'm on the board of Community Action where Jana works, and I had a board meeting that night.
Oh, okay.
So I was only at the City Council meeting.
I did not make it to the City Council meeting, so.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything went through pretty fine. I mean, there was some, regarding the accessory dwelling units, I think there was some kind of back and forth over the size that people wanted. But I think we just, if I remember correctly, we just decided to leave it exactly as is. They made a motion to raise the square footage to 1,000 square feet, but the motion failed. So then they just stuck with the 900 square feet as is. So.
Yeah, so that was around. So I'll just, if you don't mind, Brad, I'll add in a little more. So everything, the accessory dwelling unit and the multifamily, approval by right, both passed unanimously, which was awesome. And yeah, Brad's right. I think that some folks felt like the cap on the size of the ADU at 900 was a little small. I disagreed with that because I think caution would be helpful in thinking about the size of something you might be putting in someone's backyard. But anyway, but no, I thought it was, the discussions were good. And man, it was so lovely to not have, a million people there disagreeing. It was amazing in that way. So it was nice to see so much support for affordable housing. I think there's some concern that maybe the folks who would be building accessory dwelling units might just be kind of speculating. Is that the word I want to use? Just doing it for their own bottom line. And I just reflected that most of the, anecdotally, what we had heard is that it's people like Hunter and Chandra and Linnell who are just trying to build an in-law apartment in their yard for their mother-in-law, that's most of what we hear, which is, helps with affordable housing.
But I think also that people's, self-motivated interests are, it's okay. People can do it to help their bottom line, and the city's going to see increased tax revenue because we have a second unit on that property, and we're going to be, adding more rental, creating more units in the city, and we need more housing. So if people are doing it solely just because they want to make a buck, then personally, I don't have a problem with that.
Right. Yeah, as long as they're not jerky landlords, then it's cool. Yeah. And they have to live there, so.
Yeah. And with regard to the 900 square feet, I believe the ordinance contains a provision for a special permit process to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So if you want a 1,200 or 1,500 square foot accessory apartment, there is that option.
You just have to ask specifically for that, right?
Yeah.
This isn't by right. So they just have to go through the process they would have to go through now, which is a special permit.
Yeah.
Right.
So I thought it was good discussion, and it was exciting, like I said, to be able to like speak on behalf of affordable housing to an open and welcoming audience. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah, and right. So then the other piece was Donna. Was it Donna? That's her name, right? From Valley CDC.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or was it Laura?
Oh, Laura.
It's Donna.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, Laura.
This is at the CPA meeting on Thursday night.
Yep. Yeah. So she gave her presentation. I mean, honestly, they received her presentation essentially the same way that we did. That it's the most like simplistic way to explain the entire process in a way that's like so clear and easy for everybody to understand. So I know they had requested getting a copy of that presentation to forward on to the rest of City Council, just so that way they can, see, what it's all about. And then, God, I'm blanking on his name, but the chair of CPA.
Councilor
Rest.
Rist.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. He basically said, look, now's the time to act. Like there's so much political capital in City Council right now for affordable housing. So, they all seemed really enthusiastic about what she's suggesting. And I think there was also some conversations around tying their project to search for viable options in Easthampton into the school reuse program. So I know they wanted to vet a couple of those locations. So I think there's a lot of political capital to collaborate and make things work. So honestly, I'm so used to no's in housing from my entire career that like I feel like I'm spoiled with all of the unanimous yeses that we've been getting in the last year or so. So it feels pretty great.
Yeah.
Great.
I think Laura said it. She might have said it at this meeting last month, but one of the things was that I remember her saying at one point in time when it was everyone's all gung ho about housing until the site gets selected.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Exactly what I was just going to say. Wait till there's an actual project.
But it is helpful that the City Council has the political will right now to go through this. And I think Brad left out one of the salient points was that the CPA committee voted to fund the project, and it is now going to go to City Council for their July 7th meeting. But no one has to go to that meeting because they're just going to send it to subcommittee. It'll go to the Finance Subcommittee on July 14th. And then it will come back to City Council for a full vote on August 4th. So,
All right. So we should plan to be at the Finance Subcommittee and the full council on the 4th. Okay.
Yep. And I will do my best to send out reminders in advance of those meetings.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah, that's really helpful, Jamie. Thank you for doing that. Because otherwise, if I don't like either put it on my calendar or it goes poof right out of my head. So I appreciate that you do that. Thank you.
Well, I try. Sometimes I say I'll do that and then out of my head too. So.
And I'm just checking. There's nobody in the waiting room.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Councilor Peak. So Councilor Peak was going to join us to continue the discussion about the trust. And I did talk, Jeff and Jamie and I had a brief conversation the other day just to get prepared for this meeting to think about, what we wanted to, after last meeting, which was like a little bit, there was a lot happening at the last month's meeting. And so it was a little hard to figure out like what were we being asked to do. And so hopefully Councilor Peak will join us. I think that if the council is asking the housing partnership to investigate an affordable housing trust for the city of Easthampton, my personal feeling is that we need technical assistance in order to do that.
Absolutely.
And because when I think about, and I think, Jackie, I think you already know this, and Matt, Brad, maybe you do too, but there's lots of pieces to the trust. So, not only like who's on the trust, how many members there are, there's question about then what happens to the housing partnership, because most communities, start off with a housing partnership or a housing committee and then create a trust, and then can't have a duplicative role. You need to figure out who does what. The other question is, how do we fund it? Some communities, as we've learned over the years, put all their CPA housing money in the trust. Some, do other things. We don't have inclusionary zoning, but if you had incentive payments, it could go in the trust. And then to me, I think one of the biggest questions is like how the trust makes decisions. So some communities, the trust can then independently spend that money without having to go back to CPA or back to city council. Some might say that's the purpose of the trust, but some communities don't do that because they don't want to give up that control. And I think, Jackie, when this came up years ago, that was the sticking point, is that city council particularly, and I think even the mayor at the time, did not really like the idea that this independent body was going to spend money without going to city council for approval. And so I think those to me are some really big questions that I think it'd be really hard for the housing partnership to just like come up with an idea and give it to city council. So, I mean, I'm hoping Councilor Peak joins us, because I guess I'm feeling like
I just texted him. He should be here any minute.
Okay. But I don't know how others feel, but that's sort of how the direction that I'm leaning in.
And I think a good point that you raise is, the political will might be there now. And I don't know, it's not always going to be like this. So we'd have to be super careful in how it got set up to make sure that it's going to work appropriately in perpetuity.
Right.
Or whatever, until it's disbanded, because I suppose that can happen too.
Right. That happened to Northampton's. I think Northampton's is just like not active anymore.
Yeah. But they had a housing trust and a housing partnership at the same time at some point.
Right.
And I know the housing partnership still exists. I don't have details on the housing trust, but I'm sure someone does.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that I think that's a really good point, Jackie. And I think, right. So just because people like the idea of it now, we want to make sure that however it's created makes sense for the future. I mean, I think Jeff's feeling is that the planning department doesn't want to miss an opportunity. So, if all of a sudden 5 years from now there is money, or there is, we don't want to, if we create it now, then we'll have it, even if we don't use it for a little while. And I think it'll take a little while to get it going anyway.
I'm so sorry, everybody. I was doing some work around the house and I completely lost track of time. That was very.
You were just petting that cute dog of yours, I'm sure.
It's very cute.
She is
no problem. We were just basically kind of chatting about last meeting and ideas around the trust. And I was saying that I think that we need technical assistance in order to really think through, there's some sort of big question marks when you create a trust, like not just like how many members, who are the members, how do you fund it, right? So some cities and towns put all their housing CPA money into the trust.
Right.
Some fund it, other ways. And then, how do you spend the money? So I was just now I'm repeating myself, but I was just saying before that some towns, the trust can independently spend that money and not go back to city council and not go back to CPA. Some communities don't do it that way. And so those are like pretty big questions that we would want to I think have technical support so that we could really think through who do we talk to? How do we, think about this? Do we need a working committee, or something with some technical support with, city council or CPA or EDIC or some of these other folks that, might have an interest in developing it.
Right.
So those are sort of what we're thinking, but I'm really curious to hear what you think.
Well, let me just say, because I feel like I've had a better chance to sort of collect my thoughts since the last time we spoke about this. For me, when I'm looking at this, I guess the real goal, and a trust was the tool that I think has a pretty good chance of achieving this goal. But if it turned out that it was the wrong tool, then let's look at another tool. But what I really kind of wanted to see was what options do we have out there that could facilitate some affordable housing development on a smaller scale than the scale that is generally required for the larger nonprofits who develop affordable housing, because I watched the rest of that last meeting on YouTube, and it was fascinating. I've been part of a number of those conversations, and the number, sometimes 40, sometimes it's 50, but it's like for those sorts of developments to get built, there's generally this idea that to handle the feds and all of the stuff, and the fact that there's a lot of towns trying to do these projects and they don't have time for everything, there needs to be a mid double digits number of units developed, or it's not realistically something that the current players in the field are probably going to get involved with, which I completely understand and respect. And we should pursue those sorts of things. There are not that many parcels in Easthampton that we could get access to that could accommodate that. And doing those things, just because of the scale of them, draws a lot of attention, and some of that attention isn't always 100% positive. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because you all know way more about this than me. It's just, this has been my read of the situation from what I've studied so far. What I have always been interested in is the idea that, like, if the city owns a little lot, we already own all these little parcels throughout the city. Could we just put a duplex or a triplex or something on that, and then either turn the units over to be rented to somebody else or sell them, as deed-restricted affordable housing, or sell one of them market rate and another one is affordable housing, or there's a million ways for us to do these. But I feel like there's a lot of potentially cool projects that the city could get involved in.
So here's what I'm going to say to that. Yes, it's super exciting to think about. And the issue is always, who's the we who's actually going to do the building of things, right? Like, sure. That's if there were, and I didn't mean to stop your flow. So if you want to come back, I apologize, but
I guess just to really quickly wrap up what I was saying, like, I have no doubt there's a million logistical reasons why that's challenging. And yeah, the construction's one of them. Where we're going to get the money is another one. I also think that it's something that, if we're going to anywhere near what the housing production plan is, saying, like, you're not just going to be able to do that on big parcels. You're going to need to figure out something that can actually utilize those parcels. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely going to be a bunch of challenges involved, and I don't have even close to all the answers. But it seemed like a trust that could take CPA money and put it towards them would be a good first step. And then how you actually manage the logistics after that, there's a billion things that, that need to be taken into account. One of the cool things about smaller projects, though, is that if one of them doesn't go amazing. You can learn things from it, but it's not like you put all your eggs in necessarily that one basket. So it does seem like something that just in the way that I think about public policy is just like kind of try stuff and learn from it. If that sounds like facetious like that, I just generally think that you learn more and you grow more by doing things than not doing things. But like that, so that's all I have to generally say about that, is that for me, like a trust seemed like a promising vehicle to start that conversation about, this is something we know we have to do. This is something that there isn't really a lot of outside interest in doing. This is something we don't exactly understand how the best way to do is right now, but it does have to be done. So would a trust be a good way to start that? Yeah.
And I think what Jana is saying, and that I agree with, is it might be, and let's do a little more homework to find out. I want to just let you in on a little secret about the housing production plan, which is we're never going to reach the numbers that they're talking about. That's just not, it's not realistic. And we have always known that. It's not going to happen. So, and that's okay. Like, that's accepted. And Jana and Brad, jump in if you think I'm saying more than I should, but that's just, yeah.
We're never going to make it to 10%. And I think that's fine. It's just, I guess I don't. Jamie's maybe not shaking her head, but I think the goal, the units per year, could we make it 1 year? Maybe. Will we make it every year? Probably not.
And it doesn't mean you're not willing to try and try new things. Absolutely. But just that, so I think it's an aspirational goal and that we want to try and reach, but we also can temper it a little bit sometimes. That's all.
But I will go back though, because I think Councillor Peak, back to your original, what's your goal, right? What's the goal? And if the goal, because in this, actually, I think we share this goal because we've talked before about infill projects on smaller lots and how to incentivize our local developers to build these smaller projects. I think the project that may or may not happen next to Jim's Package Store is a good example of that. Because it's really, I think, overwhelming for developers to think about building an affordable housing, a small, 6 unit, 8 unit, 14 unit project, because there's so much that has to be done, right? There's so much work to go into, getting it counted on the subsidized housing inventory. So we've talked a lot about, we've never really gotten very far, but ways to incentivize that, ways to help the developer. I think you're right that a trust, if there's money, right, and the city could say, we'll give you, X number of dollars per unit, could be one way. But I think also if that's the goal, then maybe we go, we've had some conversations with CHAPA, which is a statewide advocacy organization that has some municipal engagement technical support. They have a big program that's like an 18-month, really intensive program. And then they also have what they're call it municipal engagement light, which could be 6 months of TA around a specific thing. And maybe, this could be what we go to them with. We're interested in a trust. We're interested in smaller projects. We don't have a lot of land left. Can you work with us to figure out if a trust is the right option, or is there some other option you would suggest? I think the trust, and Laura Baker reminded us this at a previous meeting, the trust doesn't build housing. So the trust could buy land, the trust could provide support for affordable housing, but it doesn't build the housing. And so you still need a developer who wants to build the thing, because I don't think the city's going to be the developer. So in the end, we're still going to need a group of maybe local, smaller time developers who want to do this kind of work. And right now we don't have them because it's super overwhelming and, daunting.
Can I throw out my crazy idea, which actually came from a conversation I had with the mayor after the last meeting, which was, Councillor Peak is talking about the different properties around the city that might be available and appropriate for building on. Maybe it's one developer like a Valley CDC or I want to call them Windjammer, Wayfinder, who comes in and, does them collectively. So it's one project sprinkled around the city, and that could potentially help with the economies of scale piece. So just putting that out there.
Interesting.
I guess if I can speak up for a second, because I'm not part of the housing partnership, being planning staff here. One of the things that has always occurred to me is that what we're missing is the ability to act quickly when we have good opportunities, and that because city government is slow, we have to go to CPA. They have a 2 or 3 month process. Even when it's fast, it's still a 6-week process to get the funds. And in a hot housing market, that's just not enough time to buy a lot or something like this. And personally, I think that Councillor Peake's idea to act on a housing partnership to act on the housing trust allows the city to act on those future opportunities. And I'm very supportive of the idea. Obviously, there's a lot of things that would have to happen, a lot of details that have to be worked out. And I do think that asking the housing partnership to do all of this work is hard because the political will to implement it and is coming from the city council, and the city council and the CPA, depending on funding, are going to have to give up some of their power to a new housing group to allow these fast types of decisions to be made. So I personally would like to see a working group of some sort come together from some members of the housing partnership that are interested in working on this, maybe CHAPA, city councilors, et cetera, to implement it. But, that's all I have.
Could I just jump in there?
Yeah.
So 2 things I want to respond to there. First of all, I certainly don't want to be under the impression that I put this on you guys. We've been on the council trying to be more sensitive to the fact that there are advisory bodies in the city who are existing largely to consult us on this stuff. There was a challenge where there was a proposed ordinance where we actually have a advisory body in the city that is supposed to be consulting on these things. And when it came to its first public hearing, and people said, well, did you reach out to these guys? What do they think about it? And it turns out that the folks who did this had done it pretty much independently. That ended up being a bad look, and the thing got withdrawn. And so when I think about doing something like this, my thought is to first come to the people who have been thinking about this for a long time and solicit any sort of advice or thoughts or guidance that they want, because the last thing I'd want is to bring a proposal like this forward and have someone say, well, did you talk to the housing partnership about this? I don't know. And maybe you would have done this completely differently. So I just didn't want to go over anybody's head. That's the first thing. In terms of the money and power thing, I can just say with 100% confidence that is not going to be a problem on the council. I think that, because first of all, if there's a trust, the council's still going to be appointing people to it, right? Presumably, it's a public body. It'll almost certainly be subject to confirmation, mayoral appointment and council confirmation. Maybe it's a little bit, maybe there's certain bodies that get to elect a certain member, but at the end of the day, it's mostly council confirmation. But also, to totally frank, like the council understands that our housing problem is kind of out of control, right? Everyone on the council understands that that I don't want to that things need to be done, and that none of us are like necessarily in the position to do everything that needs to be done, and and I think everyone understands that business as usual is not getting the results that we wanted. So I think if somebody said that, okay, there's going to be a thing like this, and let's just say we're going to appropriate a certain amount of CPA money towards this body every year. They might have other revenue streams. They might come back for more CPA money, depending, but that in general, there's going to be a certain thing, and then that's kind of going to be an operating budget, and we might get a report on it, but we're not going to have veto power on individual appropriations, because the point of this is to be able to move quicker than the council can act. Yeah. I think that provided that the council still has a say on who's on that committee, and can also choose not to reappoint people if they're not happy with how they're doing their jobs, they're going to be, I'm very confident that is not going to be a political issue for the council. So that's just I think that's a really logical thing to be concerned about. And also knowing the mood on the council and being like speaking to these people pretty regularly, like nobody's thinking like, oh, I really want to hoard power. I don't think that that's like, I don't think that, I mean, frankly, and I say this with no like disrespect at all, but most people who join the city council are not savvy enough to think like that. I mean, they're smart, but they're not like political operators, they're not, these aren't like senators. They're people in the community who are trying to make a difference.
Right.
That's really good to hear. I mean, there have been historically some opposition from elected representatives to giving up any control or power. And maybe not because of just anything other than just being afraid of a bad decision being made. But I'm not going to name names and point out projects, but there were bad decisions that were made by many elected officials, not just, like everywhere. It happens.
Yeah, I've probably made some bad decisions.
Yeah, it's not just like appointed, just because there's a public elected process doesn't mean that we're immune from that type of problem.
Yeah, I have to say that I share your enthusiasm for making things happen now as much as possible, because we have this particular council that's super supportive of the things that we're trying to do. So that's exciting. And I think Jana's right about like, let's put some attention to what makes sense. So it seems to me that working with CHAPA, we could look into what would a housing trust look like, but also what are other options, right? Would be part of that. So maybe that's not the thing because of whatever reason I can't think of off the top of my head right now. Sure. Maybe there's some other reason, but I think it makes sense to just start that conversation with someone who's had a consultant who's had more experience kind of working with other communities around setting this up and can help us think through like, what do we need to be thinking about?
Sure. And this body has the ability to request CPA funds, right? Mm-hmm. So if you figured out what it was worth, you could go to CPA and say, hey, we want to bring in a consultant to do this kind of stuff. That would be a no-brainer in my opinion. I have a really hard time, especially with Dan Rist chairing CPA. Like this is something he really cares about. And it's not like we are broke in CPA. So unless they were asking for an outrageous amount of money, I think it would be if that's the route that we wanted to go to, like go and request funds for technical assistance on this. I just have a hard time seeing that not being like a really, really, like a quick turnaround, easy appropriation request.
Well, and Chapel will do it for free, which is even better. I guess the question, if they can't do it, I know Mass Housing Partnership also provides some technical assistance to cities and towns, and they wrote that guidebook on affordable housing.
Yeah, I checked that out.
It's possible they could help us. And then I think, right, if we needed to hire a consultant because nobody could do it for free, then, I used to work at CHEPA. So if they just say no, I'm going to be really disappointed.
Oh, there you go. Well, if there's no money involved, then even better. I just, if someone says bring someone in, I automatically assume we're talking about money.
The municipal engagement initiative is free to cities and towns as long as they, there's things you have to do, and they want the city council to be engaged, obviously, that we already have.
Yeah, I think the biggest cost to it is just the time, because the CHAPA municipal engagement initiative, I believe they have one application a year, sometime in March, maybe April.
For the full one, if we wanted to go the light route, then I think that is more not during the application. We have to follow up with them, I think, is the bottom.
But even so, I think there's an application period, and with CHAPA, we are at that point working with their goals and priorities for what they want to do, and maybe it lines up really nicely, and maybe we can put in a proposal that works for them and for us. But I would just be a little concerned that we are applying for something that either they're not interested in working on, or that what they're interested in working on isn't exactly the end result that we want. Because I'm still not really clear about, at least the 18-month municipal engagement initiative, what they're really trying to, what their goals are on it. I think that the smaller, the light version of it, if we can apply for it earlier and get it, that'd be great. But if we have to wait till next March to apply, and then it's a 6 or 8 month process, I don't know how that works with city council's timelines and what you were thinking, Councilor Peak.
I mean, my general, I'm trying to, in general, like trying to just keep things moving, keep a sense of, I feel like with a lot of things politically, having a sense of momentum is really advantageous. So that's something that I'm certainly trying to, and like there's stuff for me to do in the meantime, but, on housing, we've got, there's plenty of stuff in the housing production plan that still needs to be done in terms of zoning reform. I know that Jeff has some things he wants to work on. So there's stuff to do. And by the way, that's another thing. If there's things in like the housing production plan that like you really think are priorities, like I'm on the ordinance committee. So this is just sort of my plan is just to kind of keep chipping away, just introducing those things and one after another. But if you feel like there's a priority, that's something we can definitely work towards if this body has some thoughts. But just in general, like if it was a matter of like, if there's something completely unique and incredible about what they're providing, but we couldn't start till next March, then that's one thing. But if it's like, oh, we could either start next March for free, or start in a month with some people that we pay, but we're going to have to go to CPA, then I would just do that. Like CPA is not broke.
Okay. So I think
just me though.
I mean, any CPA application right now wouldn't be approved. Funding would not be approved until the first meeting in September from City Council.
Sure.
I
figured there's going to be.
That feels like tomorrow, though. I mean, like that's not that far away, is what I'm saying. Right?
Because you're going to have to figure out what your budget even is, and who you even want to talk to, and whatever. Like that actually seems like a totally reasonable goal. Is September.
Yeah. And one of the things that those of us who have worked on the issue of affordable housing in Easthampton and other places is, you have to be in it for the long haul. Things just don't happen quickly, and that's okay. And, we've gotten stuff done by just being persistent and continuing to move things forward as best we can. And I feel like we've got a pretty good track record, honestly.
Yeah, the only thing though, I mean, I'm totally on board with what you're suggesting, Tom, and this is not to be taken as a slight to anybody in the partnership, but we functionally have opinions that we can pass on to political bodies. We don't actually have any autonomy or authority to do anything. And there's also, not just thinking of like the monetary resources to get these projects accomplished, but we don't have the bandwidth resources to do it either. We have families and full-time jobs that are existing outside of this. So, I'm in full support of creating an autonomous organization that has the authority to do this kind of stuff and fully fund it. Because, I mean, like Jackie, you were saying earlier, like you weren't trying to be negative, but if we're realistically going to accomplish the things that are in the 5-year housing plan, most of those things should already be in the post-development phase. Like we should already be rolling on all of these things in order to have them done in 5 years. Like it takes a long time from inception to completion to get these things done. So, we're absolutely doing our best, and I'm really proud of the work that everybody does in the partnership. But there has to be like a kind of sobering reality that we need lots of money and we need autonomy, and we also need like full trust from the city to be able to do these things. And maybe it's not us. Maybe we find, other allies that can help us do the work. But I think you're heading in the right direction. I want to go in the direction that you're going in. So just whatever that looks like, it needs to be something that's like official.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I'm certainly not suggesting that this body should be a trust. I'm really looking for, and what I'm really looking for is a sense of to what extent this body would be interested in working with me and potentially some other people on the council to come up with a proposal for the establishment of a trust, because there's a lot of dials and levers that you need to set at one place or another. To bring up an example from earlier, like what exactly, like how much oversight does the council have? Who's on this body? What is its actual mandate? These are sort of the questions. And, if I were to I can look through like the mass housing partnership thing and be like, oh yeah, this seems to make sense to me. Just give them total autonomy to do whatever they want and choose just some cool people and let's just see. That's honestly what I would do. I know that having people who are really thoughtful about this stuff be engaged in that conversation will lead to a better defined group that will hit the ground running better, and it'll probably scare less people when I bring it to the council, because there's a thought that a bunch of people who we appointed to be thoughtful about this worked on this proposal and ultimately supported it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the climate is right for it right now. It seems to me like a lot of the people that would be making these decisions have a lot of faith and trust in our experience and expertise. So I'm totally down for it. I do have to run though. I apologize. So thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you all, I guess, next month. Or probably actually, I'm sure at another city council meeting or a subcommittee of something or other. But
sure.
Yeah, I'm totally on board. I'm going to take a look at some stuff. I'm just going to start Googling around and looking at case studies and things like that. I'll see if I can find anything that pops out. And if I do, I'll let you all know.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad. And while you're looking, If you haven't found the MHP guidebook for the housing trusts, let me know and I can send it to you.
Yeah, can you just email it? That would be,
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen it, or if I have, I don't have a copy of it on hand.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I read, where I was like, whoa, this could be kind of cool and maybe a good fit for this community.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah, just let me know. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
So
Brad.
our next steps, maybe by September, right, is to check in with CHAPA, see what the options are for technical support, if we can get into something with them, and if not, do they have any other recommendations? They might be able to recommend a consultant if we can't, if the timing or what they're looking for to do is not, we're not connecting. And then I think, I guess what we could do from the partnership is maybe send a memo to you, Councilor Peak, and the rest of City Council, maybe outlining like what we think we could do. We either, we're going to work with CHAPA, or we're going to look for a consultant, and we're going to create a work, kind of explore the housing trust idea. Maybe I think we will need to create a working group, like you mentioned, of counselors and other folks who would be interested in talking about this. And maybe the goal for that would be maybe in early September to be able to send that memo to City Council, kind of outlining a proposal of what we could do. Does that seem to make sense?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Yeah, and so by then we should have a better idea of what we can get for technical support, and then maybe a time frame of how long it might take. I'm thinking like at least 6 months, but.
Would it make sense to also engage MHP since they wrote the thing on it?
Yeah, I think so. We've already started talking to CHAPA about the TA, but they might say, you know what, we can't do it, but you can work with MHP, or you could hire,
Sure.
MHP has like they often supply consultants to cities and towns on affordable housing issues anyway. Like if we have a 40B project, we can get an MHP consultant. So, and we've talked to MHP before about some of these issues. Laura Schufelt came out, I think, right, in her car, like before COVID, when we used to drive across the state.
Isn't that crazy?
January 2018, I think. It was like,
yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was like my first housing partnership meeting.
So I think there's options out there for, we have two really great state, resources in the state that could help us. And then if like our last resort would be asking CPA for money for a consultant. But maybe by September we'll have a better idea.
Yeah, and I guess just from a, I guess what I would just say is, and maybe this is too cynical, but nobody on the city council is going to vote no against spending money on affordable housing stuff in an election year in the fall. So that's just not a good look. In this market, it's not a good look. So if you feel like you'd get a better product, like we have that money. It's not like it's there to be spent. It doesn't like that's why we collect it, is to spend it on, for some of it, affordable housing stuff. So if we decide that funding a project like this would lead to better results in any way, just because you said the words last resort, I just want to say the council is not going to fight you on this.
Well, I was just looking, I'm looking at the guidebook to see who wrote it. Mm-hmm. So we could also go to the authors. There's also a couple people that they're giving credit to who live in our region. Rita Farrell actually is the consultant to the Amherst Affordable Housing Trust. Oh, okay. And I've known Rita a really long time. Jackie probably has too. She's been around a really long time. So it's possible we could also and she lives in Western Mass. And so it's possible we could also reach out to some of the folks who are credited in the guidebook as resources.
Sure.
I could email Rita actually.
Awesome. if I can be helpful with any of that, just let me know.
Okay.
And I think that the issue with getting a free consultant versus spending money on it is, I totally hear what you're saying, Tom, about like, this could just spend the money, and I appreciate that. But if we can save it and use it for building housing, that's cool too.
Totally.
But yes. Yep.
All right. Anything else on this issue? I know, Tom, you have to go before a 7:00 call.
I canceled the call. It's fine. It seems like you're winding down anyway, so.
I think we are, but I thank you for coming. It's really great to have you and talk this through some more. It's really helpful.
Thanks for having me.
My connection broke up a little bit. Well,
I think
we were talking about next steps, and I think maybe it broke up again right now. Sorry, I was saying my connection broke up while we're talking about next steps. And I just want to make sure that everybody, exciting to hear what they were, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
So next steps are by September, early September, we will have reached out to either CHAPA, MHP, or some of the authors of the guidebook, one of which lives in Western Mass, to figure out who can help us, and then basically submit a memo to City Council, to Councilor Peak, with a proposal of, here's the technical support we need, here's how long we think it's going to take us. If we need money, we would go to CPA and ask for money.
Okay.
And also what kinds of things are on the housing production plan in addition that we feel like we can be part of or help with or push forward. I heard that, or at least I wrote it in the minutes.
Yeah.
I totally did say that.
Yes.
Okay. And Tom, you had next steps as well.
I just said that if I can be helpful in any way, let me know. And I'm just sort of standing by to see what I can do.
Okay. Great.
Cool.
I think it's incredibly helpful for you and for the partnership to have these conversations with you and other counselors if they're interested. So it's not my place, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to invite you to keep coming back.
Yeah, I'll be here for the foreseeable future.
Great. Because I do think it's helpful to have these dialogues. And
yeah, it's good when people talk across channels, for sure.
Totally.
Okay.
Great. I don't think we actually have much left on our agenda either. And there's only 2 of us left.
We no longer have a quorum.
We know, right? We can't make any decisions anyway.
Can you even vote to adjourn?
We're not that fancy, we don't. The chair is not very good for its rules of order either. I always forget the order.
We also don't really have any decision-making power except to approve our minutes. We're an advisory committee, so it really is fine.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get dinged for it.
All right. Well, so then I am going to adjourn the meeting. It is 6:56 p.m.
Awesome.
Amy can.